Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Thursday, December 11th, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about the state of Indiana and the Republican-controlled state Senate that now soundly rejects the president's request for a new GOP gerrymander, just another loss for the president as he faces a tumultuous 2026 midterm election cycle. Indiana's Republican Party will not, in fact, deliver at the request of the president in the Oval Office as the Indiana State Senate not only voted against the new map by just an amount, it was by an amount that showed that the majority of the Republicans in the delegation soundly rejected this new proposal by a map of 31 to 19. Now, to set the stage, the Indiana State Senate is overwhelmingly Republican. Republicans have 40 seats in the Indiana State Senate, and Democrats have just 10. And yet, 31 of the total Indiana state senators voted against this new map, citing a number of different concerns, and it was a far wider margin in rejecting this map than we otherwise expected. I've been making videos for the past 2 weeks detailing that my expectations in Indiana's state Senate vote on this map would be that Republicans would reject the new congressional map, and it wasn't a hunch. It was fueled by this idea that many of the Republicans who had publicly come out against these new map proposals had cited concerns on a moral basis and a political basis as to why they would not change the existing congressional boundaries. And to be quite honest with you, Indiana is an overwhelming Republican gerrymander already. Republicans have about 7 seats in the Indiana state delegation. On the House side, they control both Senate seats. They have a trifecta in the state. So Republicans really do dominate the state of Indiana at large. And Democrats are contained to one safe district and a toss-up district up in northern Indiana, in a district that Kamala Harris won by less than half a point. And looking at the map here, we already know this GOP gerrymander was engineered to ensure that all 7 seats were secure for the Republican Party in future elections existing through the end of the decade. But the mid-decade redraw that was put about for the Republicans to vote on was a map that eliminated every single Democratic district in the state. We can see it here visualized on VoteHub. The Indiana proposal here is one that would give the Republican Party quite a significant advantage in the congressional boundaries here. You will find that every single district would essentially be considered safe. Now, the apprehension first came about as some of these senators realized that it isn't just a consideration around what happens on the congressional level, but that many of these state senators are actually beholden to constituencies that are more lopsided in favor of the Democratic Party than you otherwise might think. Many of these Republicans in the state Senate actually do come from Democratic districts, given that Kamala Harris won about 40% of the state's vote in the last presidential election. Despite Democrats only having 20% representation, a lot of that representation are in toss-up districts that Republicans continue to win. But it isn't even just that either. Republicans know at their core that it is their party that began this entire battle, this redistricting initiative across the country in Texas, Missouri, North Carolina, that was made to mitigate losses that they could expect to see in the 2026 midterm elections. And so in that knowing, the President of the United States, J.D. Vance, Mike Johnson, have all gone down to the state of Indiana, or Donald Trump had some of these state senators meet with him in the Oval Office and ask them, what do you need? What is it that will get you over the finish line? And to be quite honest with you, the vote here that was so expansive was not even what the Democrats were hoping would be in their best case scenario. Now, we're going to talk to somebody tomorrow who comes from the state of Indiana. We'll premiere the video tomorrow, who's an elected official who can talk a little bit more about what's happening in Indiana, but to look at it from a very real perspective, the Indiana State Senate being, 40 Republicans and 10 Democrats, you needed just 26 votes in order for this to pass. And so you could have really shaved off about 14 Republicans and every single Democrat voting against the map, and you would still find that this map would end up passing. And looking at what happened in the Indiana House, you can see there when we jump over to what the Indiana State House looks like. Let's look at the House of Representatives in the state. Republicans have 70 seats here. Despite Republicans having less seats in the state Senate, only 11 Republicans voted against the new maps being implemented. Only 11 Republicans. 12 Republicans, actually. A Democrat was absent from the vote here. But just 12. In the state Senate, you had 21 Republicans joining the Democrats. And here's the thing. When all of these conversations were being had about the new maps, only about, 14, 13 to 14 Republicans on the Indiana State Senate level publicly came out against the new maps, despite inquiries from their constituents, despite town hall meetings that they held, despite journalists knocking at their doorstep every single way, asking, how are you going to vote? How are you going to vote? How are you going to vote? They actually had a significant chunk, about 7 of these Republicans that were seen as, nobody knows how they're going to vote votes. Essentially, when they were counting the votes, Republicans had about 15 on their side that they could reasonably count on. There were about 14 that were in opposition, and in the middle, there were a bunch of people who would not explain their vote, who would not answer questions about it. But we figured that a lot of those Republicans, that many of them came from toss-up districts, were hedging their bets, that they were looking at it and saying, you know what, I'm not going to make a statement on it, because if I just vote yes, I can make the argument it was going to pass without me no matter what, so I decided to join my party because X, Y, and Z, right? Those were the things that we saw. But in fact, the opposite happened. Many of these Republicans who did not make a statement on it, despite pressure from Donald Trump, from their governor, from their, leaders in the state general assembly, they withheld their vote and kept it secret to them, enough so that the Democratic Party's best case scenario that they were tracking for on this map was 27 to 23. And the expectation was that if the votes, because 14 Republicans had said yes, one on the Senate floor, I was watching this live, one on the Senate floor said, I will vote no on this bill. It was a 50-50 vote where we didn't know where this state senator had landed. He finally confirmed that he would be voting against. That reached 25. But the lieutenant governor had been very adamant that he would break the tie in favor of the new map. And so we knew that it was already going to be 25 to 25 at worst case for the Democrats, but also very possibly at best case for the Democrats, because none of the other Republican senators, the 6 that voted with the 25 that were vocal in their opposition, said anything when they were speaking on the floor, talking about the bill, said nothing to the press. And that was going to be the case where Democrats were considering, if it gets to the lieutenant governor, does one of them vote present, deny the 26 necessary or the majority necessary that the lieutenant governor would be able to break that tie? All of these different things were under consideration for the Democrats. But not only did this vote fail, it did so by a massive margin. Enough so that more Republicans voted against it than for it. That has to count for something. And I mentioned earlier on a bit about, the conversation that I think many Republicans had from an electability standpoint. Not only that they were worried about their own districts in the Indiana State Senate, but that this new map that was being released following the Tennessee 7th District threw into consideration what might happen in some of these races. In Tennessee's 7th District, we saw a shift from 2024 to 2025 of about 13 percentage points. Under the new Indiana map, Democrats would still win the 1st District and would have a possibility, if they outperform Afton-Bain by 4 or 5 points, 5 or 6 points rather, would end up winning 2 or 3 additional seats from the Republicans, making the new gerrymander a dummy-mander, because Afton-Bain's performance on the Tennessee 7th race was actually the least amount of shift we've seen in a special election on the House level this entire year. Races like the one in Virginia shifted 16. Races like those in Florida shifted 15 to 18. The math here would not have been secure enough for Republicans that the new map would have made them feel comfortable about where they were, especially in 2026. And so I do think it is notable, and I do think it is coming from a place of morality for many of these Indiana Republicans as to why they opposed this new map. We saw Governor Mitch Daniels, who was, Republican governor of Indiana. He came out publicly against it. We knew a lot of Republicans did not have vocal positions on the new maps here. And it isn't really that they are trying to, it wasn't that they were for it and just didn't want to say anything. Many of them were against it. Indiana Republicans are probably some of the most tame, Republicans you will find, especially those in a state Senate position or in a governor position, not Mike Braun, but the rest, largely because they are not the standard type of Republican. I mean, this is the same state that made Mike Pence. I do not think Mike Pence, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not think Mike Pence would have done what Donald Trump did if he had the Oval Office, which was threatened state funding over the passage of this map. a blatantly illegal threat to sway the vote in the state legislature by saying that roads would be closed, by saying that facilities would be shut down if they did not implement the new map. Well, now Republicans clearly have their work cut out for them. The Indiana map failing is only another page in the book of this long list and long and expansive novel of Donald Trump losses in the 2025 year. Whether New Jersey, New York City, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Utah, Indiana, now potentially Missouri, right? Across the board, California. I mean, you are finding that in every case, these new maps, these new decisions, this new push from Donald Trump and the GOP to redraw these boundaries in the middle of the decade are coming to a screeching halt. Because now, this throws everything awry. The current districts that we've seen changed come out of Utah, with Democrats now gaining a seat. Come out of California, with Democrats now gaining 5. Come out of Texas, with Republicans gaining 5. Come out of Missouri, with Republicans gaining 1. Come out of North Carolina, with the Republicans gaining 1. And coming out of Ohio, with maybe the Republicans gaining 1. What you've heard so far is that the best case scenario for the GOP is up 2. Missouri and Utah cancel each other out. California and Texas do too. But in Indiana, there's no new map. The vote fails resoundingly, and there won't be another opportunity to really change the minds of the senators who have voted on the record, now very publicly, who I don't doubt are receiving threats to their homes immediately from the Republicans who are angry at them, because those who immediately came out against it were swatted. They were attacked. They were threatened. They were, berated against by national GOP figures. They could not catch a break. And they vote with Republicans 99% of the time. But as it comes down to doing a mid-decade redraw, they didn't find themselves too happy with it. They didn't seem to like these bully pulpit tactics that the President of the United States weaponized against them. These are members of his own party, and he is treating them like they are his, like subservient animals who are supposed to bend at any point to what the request of the president is, and he did not care when talked about by reporters and asked about the threats that they are facing. This is a very human endeavor. Politics is inherently human. And the fact remains that the President of the United States' response to what these state senators are voting on and their opinions on it, I actually believe that had there not been this mounted pressure campaign from Donald Trump, that the vote probably would have ended up better. I don't think it would have passed. Don't get me wrong. I don't think that Donald Trump's outsized influence in a state that could not care on the state Senate level about what Donald Trump thinks about a primary that will take place in State Senate District 13 in 2030. Forgive me. And I don't think that this is something that is in the active minds of these state senators, and they have shown this, they will not be allowed to be trampled over by the President of the United States, even if they are members of his own party. Because there is a lot of these Republicans who have publicly came out and said, I am all for Trump. I voted for him 3 times. I will not vote for redistricting. And whether or not you agree with everything prior to the I will not vote for redistricting, they denied the GOP an opportunity to axe out Democratic control to just 0 districts in the state. This map not passing shows not only that Indiana, the state Senate, has the balls to stand up to the President of the United States, but also, too, that Donald Trump's influence is dwindling. Donald Trump's impact and ability to twist the arms of these members of the Indiana State Senate is dwindling. Despite months of this onslaught of attacks and campaigns against them, they simply will not move. And Indiana State Senate, as it stands right now, rejected this map with the majority of Republicans and every single Democrat joining forces to vote against this bill 31-19. And so I encourage, this to be a point of interest for all of you guys watching, not just in Indiana, but we'll watch what happens in Missouri. What happens as that, judge rejected the state Republican Party Attorney General's claim about trying to throw out signatures? What happens in Virginia as they navigate this new vote in January and put it forth to a vote come in March or April? We will track these losses and wins for the president and for the Democrats. But as it stands right now, not a good sign for Donald Trump whatsoever. And I think it really goes to show that even in states like Indiana, where the president won in the last election by a margin here, 60-40, they still will not be persuaded, and not even just persuaded, but bullied into voting in the way that Donald Trump would like them to. And as it stands in the state thus far, Democrats and Republicans have joined forces in rejecting the president's request at a new congressional map in a massively public way, and yet again, another loss for Donald Trump and the GOP nationwide. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already. Check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch and then a playlist for my 2026 House election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.